So for the last year, but more specifically in the last month, I've been working on directing my first feature film. And tomorrow I'm about to start about 2 weeks of every day being at the studio, flying to Nashville, shooting the first chunk of content for this film. And it's definitely been a long process. There's a lot of people involved. It's the largest budget that I'm directing. But this video is about, how did I get here? Directing $1 million projects and bringing filmmaking into my life in this way. So going way, way back to the beginning, actually directing was the first job I ever really wanted to do. I didn't even know what it is. I didn't know what producing was. I didn't really know that much about filmmaking. I did know I loved movies. Both of my parents were professors, so they had PhDs. They're very academic. They also love movies too, but they definitely were in no place to think about making them, although they've been involved in some films, but not to the level that I've brought filmmaking into my life. But I remember being a director was like one of those things. I thought as a kid that was a job that I really wanted to do. But again, didn't know how, didn't know where to start, didn't know who to talk to or how projects come together. And so I just basically thought, well, maybe one day it'll happen. I got a camera for my 9th birthday and I started shooting that party, and I still have it on VHS, on tape. And that was my first try at making something. Very, very little editing. Then over a number of years, I had a series of cameras and I would tape often. Like instead of doing schoolwork, I would make videos. I would edit them at home on like movie maker, and I would make little videos for me and my friends. Every time my friends came over, we would write a little script or make a little documentary, and then I would tape it, edit it, and then show them a few weeks later. And that gave me like a lot of joy. It was super fun, and I didn't realize that I was directing and producing at that time because it was so basic, I guess, in my head, but that's essentially how I got started. And then over the years, I got really interested in technology and a bunch of other stuff. I got a job at Apple and I was working there, and there were like some filmmakers there, and I thought like, oh, it'd be really dope to make some films. Like I was really around a group of people that were super creative, but again, didn't know how, didn't have the money, and I just felt overall like maybe those dreams were slightly out of reach. I remember going to the TIFF Lightbox Theatre here in Toronto, which is where the TIFF Film Festival is, and at one point, this was years ago, but they had an Oscar in this case that you could go in and like look at, and I just remember looking at it and having this thought in my head that I would never be able to do that. It was something that I wanted, I'd grown up watching the Oscars, but I would never have an opportunity to kind of work on something that had that involved in it, essentially. And then I really started, a bunch of stuff happened, lost my best friend, had this like really terrible breakup, and it really pushed me to start thinking about, okay, how can I not let these hopes just sit there? Like, I knew I wanted to make movies, I knew I wanted to be more creative, I knew I wanted to be doing more directing and more producing, so what could I do? So I started to meet some people and just ask them how they were making films, what gear they had, which now I realize is a question that is not even the first thing that you should be asking, but sort of what gear they have, how they put together a project, what projects they're editing on, and so on and so forth. I even reached out to a few filmmakers that I just would see at festivals. Like I saw that they had a movie there, and then I'd say, hey, I'm like trying to work on this film and I need some advice. So I met with a lot of production companies and producers who were way, way, way ahead of me, but I just wanted to kind of learn how I should be making movies, who I needed to meet, and what people I needed to develop, because it's not something that you can always do by yourself. You can definitely make a movie by yourself, but there's sometimes a lot more people involved. And I also knew that I didn't want to be the main shooter forever, the person operating the camera, because I was still operating the camera a lot, and people would reach out to me, hey, could you tape this event, or could you tape this panel, or could you tape this talk for $100, $150. But over time I was like, I don't really want to be doing that so much. I would rather get some extra help. So luckily at Apple, there were a lot of people that could operate camera. So I ended up making a friend. We hit it off really right away. We were both really into film, and he was like, I want to make a documentary. And I was like, I want to make a documentary too, because I'd always been really into documentary. And I was like kind of afraid of what he'd say about the topic that I wanted to make. So, because it was a very personal story to me, and I had a lot of ideas about what it should be. I told him, and luckily he was down. He was in film school / had just finished film school. I never went to film school. I went to very sort of, I would say like academic film school where you watch movies and you talk about them, but I didn't actually learn about like cameras and crews and things like that. So he had a lot of that information that he brought to the table. And then we teamed up to make this film. It took about 2 years. We did the fundraising for it. We built the crew. We got a couple of director photographies, people who could operate the camera. We co-directed. It was a doc, but we wrote the topics. Again, did the fundraising. We did it for about $10,000 of privately raised money, and we set off and made this film. That film has had a huge life since then. People still reach out, even just last week, to show it. I still talk with it regularly, and it was like the first movie that I made, basically, and it still has a life today. During that time, I was doing a lot of like goal setting. I wrote down all the things that I wanted to do. One of them was make a movie, followed by do things like have a movie in TIFF, have a movie at Sundance, speak, things like that. Basically, all of those things came true, which is really awesome. So after I made that film, I was asked to produce and help on a few others. And I had met a number of filmmakers along the way, just at events and things like that, started to build my network of creatives. And one of them was working on a new short that she had written, and she asked me to help produce it. So we did that maybe back in 2015, 2016. That film also did really well. It was at TIFF, it was at Sundance, so I got to go there, and it was just such a fun time and really, just a really awesome experience. And then after that film came out, at the time I was running my Facebook ad agency, and I was doing a lot of marketing, and film was just kind of there in the background. And then I got a couple of jobs that allowed me to do the marketing and also produce content, film content for the companies that I was working in. A lot of the time I would just be given creative and say, here, go run this creative as a Facebook ad. This time I was saying like, let's make something together. Let's like make a video project. And I teamed up with this, one of our client companies who was already making film stuff, and I'm actually directing something for them in a couple weeks, but they were already making stuff, so it was this perfect synergy. And that was the birth of the new agency model that I was in, essentially doing video and marketing, specifically helping clients make videos and do storytelling within their brand, but that was the beginning of it. So we made a bunch of stuff together. I did a lot of shoots, lots of interviews, lots of experience there. And over time, I just kept on kind of working with different people in those ways, building out the team, building out the crews, understanding how to put these things together, run budgets, do project pitches. Like if someone says, we want this done, all right, this is the budget, this is how we're gonna set it up, these are the people that we need. So that just developed and developed. The company that I originally had and started that with, actually the first person that I made that film with, we kind of dissolved that for a number of reasons. I kept staying in the space though, and I still do this type of stuff today, filmmaking for brands, as well as for myself. Just in the last year, I've directed things for Estee Lauder. They put me on a Clinique thing. I did something for Joe Malone. I did something, for CBC. No one knows what that is, but unless you're Canadian. And now I'm still doing this kind of directing, as well as these film projects for myself. Oh yeah, and I guess how I got this project was that one of the people who worked on is directing this film with me, this feature film, saw my first film, and then was like, we want you on this project. So that's kind of how I got here. And so I'm about to start that. well, it started, but I'm about to go shoot it. As I said, I start officially tomorrow. And that it's a way that I obviously the company at the same time that I'm shooting that, we're shooting stuff for Bacardi. There's a bunch of stuff going on. Luckily, I've got a really strong team built there. The nervous part was thinking like, I'm gonna be doing this film. The company's still gonna run. I also have my consulting clients, so I'm just kind of between all of this stuff. But I'm hoping that just with time, just things feel, they start to meld together as they usually do. And ideally, this film produces something really great. I will do my best to kind of document as I go this experience, going to shoot in Nashville, as well as a shoot in Toronto, and see how this all turns out. But that is the story of how I officially became a director and filmmaker, as well as running a business that does filmmaking storytelling. And I encourage you, if you want to do certain things, well, if you want to make movies, feel free to reach out, leave a comment. I'd love to connect. But if there are those things on your to-do list that you've wanted to do for a really long time, I'd encourage you to find that network, start small, build it up, and you 100% can get there. Won't be the easiest route, but you can get there.